Everything is in this encrypted USB drive from my grandfather. The data trail doesn't lie. I held the sleek black device in my trembling hand, my voice echoing through our high-tech living room where security cameras silently recorded our confrontation. That's absurd. Pure fabrication. Maxwell's face flushed crimson against his expensive tailored suit. It's not fabrication. Would you like me to display the contents on our smart wall? My finger hovered over the home automation panel, ready to broadcast his crimes. Yes. Do it. Vivian challenged, her perfectly manicured hand gripping her designer clutch. Complete nonsense, all lies. Even now they refuse to acknowledge what they've done. I felt the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. I wasn't merely angry. I was utterly stunned by their audacity, watching their desperate performance through eyes that finally saw their true nature. Give me that USB drive immediately. Maxwell lunged toward me, his tall frame moving with surprising agility for his age. The digital forensics officer quickly stepped between us, blocking my father-in-law's attempt while other officers restrained my in-laws from both sides, their badges gleaming under the recessed lighting. Eleanor? Victor murmured my name, his Harvard-educated confidence now stripped away as he hung his head in shame. I can't recognize you as my husband anymore. To betray the people I've cherished so deeply. I trusted you completely, I said to him. My voice broke as emotion overwhelmed me, the rest of my accusations dissolving into uncontrollable sobs that echoed through our Boston estate. My name is Eleanor Wright, 52 years old. I serve as CEO of Wright Enterprise, overseeing a corporate empire while raising one daughter. What distinguishes me from other executives isn't just my gender but my heritage. My grandparents built a financial dynasty that transformed American business. When I was barely a year old, my parents died tragically in a highway collision, leaving me with no personal memories of them. Instead, I was raised with extraordinary privilege and genuine love by my maternal grandparents in our historic Boston estate. Sometimes I envied schoolmates with conventional families, but my grandparents showered me with such profound affection that even my closest friends at Radcliffe secretly envied my position. My grandfather Franklin was the visionary founder and chairman of Wright Enterprise, a conglomerate spanning technology, finance, and real estate, while my grandmother Margaret served as both his strategic partner and the family's connection to Boston society. I grew up surrounded by limitless opportunity and resources under their protective wings. They raised me, their only daughter's child, with both emotional warmth and strategic preparation for leadership. Our family compound employed household staff, private chefs, landscapers, and security personnel, all of whom treated me with professional care and personal kindness. This constant presence meant loneliness rarely found me, though I sometimes feel guilty for not missing my biological parents more deeply. During my early childhood, my paternal grandparents were still alive and would make obligatory visits several times annually from their home across the country. But I distinctly remember feeling a strange emptiness when they passed, marking my first confrontation with mortality and loss. After completing my MBA with honors, I married Victor Wright, formerly Harrington. While technically an arranged match, our union had been anticipated by both families, it aligned perfectly with business strategy. From childhood, I understood I would marry someone capable of helping steward my grandparents' corporate legacy, and Victor exemplified the ideal candidate with his financial acumen. My grandparents selected him carefully, leveraging their extensive connections to ensure both corporate synergy and my personal happiness. Victor joined our family, taking the right name as tradition dictated for spouses marrying into our dynasty. I harbored no reservations about our arrangement and found genuine contentment in our partnership. Our marriage has brought me substantial satisfaction. Victor committed himself wholeheartedly to his role as CFO and potential successor, developing the expertise our organization required. Outside observers might dismiss our union as merely strategic, but they fail to understand the profound trust and respect we cultivated. Our relationship lacked the dramatic passion of romantic novels. But we methodically built something equally valuable, a partnership founded on mutual respect and shared purpose. At least, that's what I believed until recently. Our primary challenge came with fertility issues that delayed parenthood. Both my mother and grandmother had married in their early 20s and became mothers by 20. I had hoped to follow their timeline, but heeded my grandparents' insistence on completing my education first, marrying Victor at 22 after graduation. Finally, at 29, following 7 years of marriage, multiple fertility treatments, and temporary career adjustments, we welcomed our daughter Olivia. She was absolutely perfect, and we cherished her deeply, continuing the right tradition of multi-generational devotion. Olivia is truly my greatest vulnerability. If anything happened to you, I'm not sure I could continue functioning effectively. Victor once told her during a family dinner. What about me? Don't I qualify as your weakness too? I asked, feigning hurt while maintaining my professional composure. That's not what I meant, Eleanor, you're essential to me as well. Victor's face showed immediate concern. When I adopted a wounded expression, Victor became visibly distressed. When I finally broke character with a smile, his relief was palpable. A brief, genuine moment between corporate power players. Amid our otherwise comfortable existence, one persistent shadow loomed: Victor's parents, Maxwell and Vivian Harrington. How to describe them accurately? They perpetually viewed me with a combination of thinly veiled resentment and calculated deference. I maintained professional cordiality because they were Victor's parents and business associates, but without those connections, I wouldn't have allocated them any personal bandwidth in my life. My father-in-law Maxwell held the presidency of a Wright Enterprise subsidiary, despite his questionable executive capabilities. He had systematically mismanaged the company he inherited until financial collapse seemed inevitable, forcing him to approach my grandfather for a bailout that barely preserved the operation. Grandfather frequently remarked in private board meetings, if he weren't Victor's father, I would have terminated his position years ago, viewing his continued employment as a necessary compromise for family harmony. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law Vivian proved equally problematic, constantly cultivating proximity whenever advantageous while maintaining a flourishing Instagram presence that projected false intimacy with our family. Eleanor, darling, there's a charity gala at Phillips Foundation next weekend, and I simply must attend. But my wardrobe lacks the appropriate statement piece, she would delicately suggest while scrolling through luxury brand websites on her tablet. Victor advised maintaining professional boundaries with her manipulative requests, but I frequently acquiesced, providing access to designer connections or outright gifts to maintain superficial peace. I'm just so grateful. With your mother gone, Eleanor, you should consider me your surrogate. I'm always here for maternal guidance, she would declare while positioning us for perfectly framed social media photos. Even during these calculated performances, her artificial warmth never reached her eyes, leaving me to privately sigh at the performance while maintaining the public image our corporate reputation demanded. I've been married to Victor for 30 years now. Except for the complex dynamics with my in-laws, it's been genuinely fulfilling and harmonious. Our daughter Olivia has blossomed into a brilliant and forthright young woman. Having graduated from Princeton with honors, she now divides her time between Wharton Business School and shadowing our senior executives. At 23, she's approaching that pivotal age where career trajectories take shape. I found myself contemplating potential matches who might eventually partner with her in leading Wright Enterprise into its next era. That's incredibly antiquated. I'll choose my own partner based on personal compatibility and shared values. Olivia's response was immediate, her eyes flashing with that characteristic Wright determination I'd seen in my grandfather. My partnership with your father has brought me tremendous satisfaction. A thoughtfully arranged match doesn't preclude finding genuine connection. I maintained my composure while scrolling through quarterly projections on my tablet. I appreciate what you and Dad have built together, but I need to explore life beyond our corporate ecosystem. I want authentic happiness with someone I discover on my own terms. Is that really so unreasonable? Her argument carried the precise logical structure they taught at Wharton, making me privately proud even as we disagreed. Every time I broached the subject of strategic partnerships through marriage, Olivia firmly rejected the concept. During these conversations, Maxwell and Vivian invariably surfaced with thinly veiled suggestions about Nathan, Philip's son. Philip himself is a decent executive, the reasonable one in the Harrington family. However, Philip is 5 years Victor's senior, started his family earlier, and consequently Nathan considerably outages Olivia. Furthermore, despite being 35, Nathan remains unmarried, largely because he mirrors his controlling grandparents' worst traits rather than his father's steadier temperament. His rejection rate in Boston's elite social circles is notorious despite his executive title at his grandparents' company, a position where he contributes minimal value while maximizing his expense accounts. It's an ideal arrangement, wouldn't you agree? This would create an unbreakable alliance between both branches of the family. Maxwell's suggestion came during a board dinner, his voice carrying strategically across the private dining room. Yes, they're perfectly complementary as cousins. The genetic diversity is sufficient while maintaining family cohesion. Vivian added with inappropriate enthusiasm, her Instagram already open to capture reactions. The synergies are undeniable. Maxwell raised his crystal whiskey glass in premature celebration. Absolutely not. Even if Olivia herself expressed interest, which she emphatically hasn't, I would oppose this match on multiple grounds. Olivia's personal and professional partnerships remain entirely her decision. My response was measured but unequivocal, ending further discussion. Yet they persistently resurrect this inappropriate suggestion whenever opportunity presents, creating increasing tension at family gatherings. Olivia herself has directly confronted them, stating unambiguously, "Why would I ever consider marrying someone who lacks both personal ambition and basic competence?" She delivered this assessment through her own grandparents to maintain professional distance. Victor, protective of our daughter's autonomy, has reprimanded his parents severely for their persistent boundary violations, yet they appear undeterred in their campaign. Despite our otherwise stable existence, I never anticipated the devastating shock that would suddenly upend our lives. Eleanor? Victor's voice came through my phone with unusual tension. Yes, what is it? I responded while reviewing acquisition documents. Listen carefully and maintain your composure. His words carried a weight that immediately commanded my full attention. As the information penetrated my consciousness, my phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto my mahogany desk. My grandparents, the pillars of both our family and corporate empire, had apparently taken their own lives. Victor's unexpected call delivered this incomprehensible news. Franklin and Margaret mentioned they were headed to the Vermont estate early, correct? I went to check on them since the weather forecast looked concerning, but... Victor's voice faltered uncharacteristically. According to Victor's account, grandfather had shot grandmother with his hunting rifle before jumping from the second-floor balcony onto the stone garden terrace below. That's completely impossible. The words escaped me in a whisper of disbelief. I couldn't process what I was hearing. The information struck me with physical force, leaving me momentarily unable to form coherent thoughts. We had decided just days earlier to activate the Vermont property ahead of schedule to escape Boston's unusual January cold snap. This winter's temperatures are breaking records. It creates particular challenges for seniors. I had expressed concern during our last family dinner. At 95 and 92 respectively, my grandparents were remarkably vital but still vulnerable to extreme conditions. Are you experiencing any discomfort? The medical center could perform a preventative evaluation. I had suggested with genuine concern. Nothing of the sort, grandfather had dismissed with his characteristic confident smile. In Boston, we've become overly dependent on artificial climate control systems. Modern medical advice strongly recommends maintaining consistent temperatures for elderly residents. I had countered gently. Smart home climate systems can be particularly harsh on aging bodies. We'd prefer the authentic warmth of wood-burning fireplaces and natural ventilation. Their reasoning had seemed reasonable enough as they departed for Vermont. Grandfather. Grandmother, why would you do this? The question escaped me as tears overwhelmed my carefully maintained composure. The shocking deaths of Wright Enterprises founder and his wife reverberated through Boston's business community and beyond. Law enforcement initiated a comprehensive investigation, with my grandparents' remains transported to the medical examiner's facility. Corporate protocol dictated a formal company memorial service, leaving minimal decisions for immediate family members. Yet this enforced passivity only intensified my constant internal questioning. Why? How could this happen? No matter how I analyzed the situation, I couldn't reconcile their final actions with the pragmatic, resilient people who had shaped my entire existence. Then Victor approached me in my home office, his expression grave. Eleanor, there's something I need to disclose. On that day, I experienced significant apprehension and traveled to Vermont immediately. Apprehension? I looked up from my untouched correspondence. Yes. I couldn't bring myself to tell you earlier, but Margaret had been exhibiting concerning cognitive indicators, he said. What? That's completely implausible. My denial was instantaneous and visceral. I rejected this assessment outright. During our regular interactions, both grandparents displayed some expected physical limitations, but their mental acuity remained remarkably sharp during complex business discussions. I simply cannot accept that assertion. My voice remained steady despite my internal turmoil. It's unfortunately accurate. Franklin consulted me privately about her condition, expressing profound concern about their future, he said. So you're suggesting grandfather became overwhelmed by grandmother's cognitive decline and acted catastrophically? I asked. The hypothesis felt fundamentally wrong. I shared this assessment with the investigating officers. I deeply regret not informing you sooner. Perhaps different interventions might have been possible. Victor's eyes glistened with apparent emotion as he lowered his head in a gesture of contrition. Victor's unexpected revelation left me spiritually and emotionally devastated. I moved through subsequent days in a dissociative haze, the world continuing around me while I remained internally frozen in disbelief. 1 week after my grandparents' apparent suicide, a sealed envelope arrived from our family's accounting firm. Inside was a USB drive and letter from grandfather marked, "Confidential, Eleanor Wright only." According to our accountant, Franklin had entrusted these items with specific delivery instructions should anything happen. I considered sharing this with Victor, but the privacy marking gave me pause. I retreated to my study, engaged the security lock, and opened the package. The note warned, "Review these digital files independently. Share with no one, especially not Victor." As I decrypted the contents using our private passphrase, disturbing evidence emerged. I immediately contacted law enforcement. Days later, investigators presented their findings with our family present while security cameras documented everything. We appreciate your patience. We're here to present our findings regarding the Wright deaths, the lead investigator began, activating the display. The forensic results confirmed the physical causes. Margaret died from a gunshot wound, Franklin from the balcony fall, he said. What about the criminal investigation aspects? I asked, maintaining my composure despite my turmoil. That's where significant anomalies emerged, the investigator replied, uploading additional files. Anomalies? Maxwell interrupted, adjusting his collar. Yes. The ballistic trajectory analysis presents serious inconsistencies, explained the forensics specialist with a 3D reconstruction. The trajectory? I leaned forward to study the rendering. According to our modeling, the shooter's height is critical. Based on ballistics, we've calculated the shooter at approximately 5 feet 11 inches. Franklin Wright stood 5 feet 3 inches. This 8-inch difference creates an insurmountable inconsistency, he said. I understand physics. Couldn't Franklin have stood on something? Maxwell interjected with forced confidence. That's possible, the officer nodded. The Vermont property contains furniture that could provide elevation. Maxwell said. Have you personally visited the Vermont estate, Mr. Harrington? I asked pointedly. Well, no, Maxwell admitted, his smile faltering. That's correct. We never extended invitations to the Harringtons, I stated, maintaining eye contact. We were invited to some other Wright property, Vivian attempted to salvage. You're referring to our Hamptons house, with entirely different layout, I corrected immediately. My in-laws exchanged relieved glances. So Franklin must have positioned himself on furniture, Maxwell summarized confidently. Why would that be necessary? Why not simply approach closer? I challenged. Excuse me? Maxwell's composure slipped. The ballistics don't support that scenario, I pressed firmly. We can't establish motive, only physical evidence, the investigator redirected. However, Mr. Harrington, records indicate you stand approximately 5 feet 11 inches. Is that accurate? Maxwell's facial muscles contracted involuntarily. You're precisely the height our model indicates for the shooter. Victor mentioned inheriting his height from you? The investigator continued. I've lost height with age. Standard spinal compression. Maxwell hunched his shoulders demonstratively. Our records show you maintain hunting licenses in 3 states. Is that current? The investigator asked. I merely maintain the licensing. I sold all firearms years ago, he replied, his confidence wavering. But you're proficient in their operation? The investigator asked again. I wouldn't say. I don't recall. Maxwell paled visibly. All evidence is in this encrypted drive from my grandfather. I held up the device. It shows Maxwell and Vivian systematically pressuring my grandparents about succession, with increasingly aggressive tactics. Franklin's final message states, if you're accessing these files, it confirms my suspicions about Maxwell and Vivian. Trust nothing about our deaths. When I revealed this, Maxwell's composure collapsed completely. That's preposterous. A fabrication. He shouted as I offered to display the contents. Yes. Do it. Authorized the investigator. Complete fabrication. Maxwell lunged toward me unexpectedly. The forensics officer intercepted him while others secured both in-laws. Victor. Tell them we're being framed. Vivian pleaded desperately. Father, mother, enough. The evidence is conclusive, Victor stated firmly. Victor orchestrated everything. Our own son did this. They desperately blamed him. As they were escorted out, I confronted Victor about his silence. I'm profoundly sorry. I trusted them, he whispered, unable to meet my gaze. Just as Victor was about to be taken away, Olivia intervened. My father had absolutely no involvement. I have definitive evidence. The timeline clears him completely, she explained, activating her tablet. Our smart home system recorded Dad in Boston during the murders, saying, "What have you actually done?" and "No, Olivia will be devastated if," she said. You've verified this independently? The officer asked skeptically. Yes. Our system timestamps everything automatically. GPS data and train schedules prove it would take minimum 2 hours 17 minutes to reach Vermont from Boston. Dad physically couldn't have been in both locations, she said. I studied my daughter carefully. Her expression showed not a desperate daughter, but an executive presenting verified facts. We'll still require your husband's statement, the investigator concluded as Victor was escorted from our home. Following an exhaustive investigation integrating digital forensics, financial records, and testimony, the authorities confirmed exactly what my grandfather's encrypted files had revealed. Maxwell and Vivian Harrington had methodically escalated pressure on my grandparents to accelerate leadership transition, ultimately resorting to violence when Franklin Wright unequivocally refused their demands. Victor learned of his parents' actions through a direct phone call they placed immediately following the murders, which Olivia's smart home system had fortuitously recorded. I urged my parents to surrender themselves immediately, but they weaponized family loyalty against me, Victor's testimony revealed. They explicitly stated that if they were prosecuted, Olivia would forever carry the stigma as granddaughter of murderers throughout Boston society. I made the wrong choice in that moment of shock. I deeply regret my failure, he said. Despite my initial sense of betrayal upon discovering Victor's knowledge of events, I gradually recognized the impossible position he'd faced, torn between exposing his parents' crimes and protecting our daughter from potential damage. Prosecutors ultimately declined to pursue charges against Victor. The district attorney explained that while concealing knowledge of a crime typically constitutes criminal behavior, cases involving immediate family members present complex considerations where courts recognize psychological duress. Maxwell and Vivian faced multiple felony charges including first-degree murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Their advanced age did nothing to mitigate their calculated actions. Franklin had recognized their intentions, plainly telling Maxwell during their final confrontation that he would never permit the Harringtons to control Wright Enterprise while he drew breath. The words sealed his fate. Surprisingly, Nathan, the cousin they had so persistently pushed toward Olivia, has flourished since distancing himself from his grandparents' influence. Now pursuing independent software development, he's building a promising startup. Although cleared of criminal charges, Victor voluntarily resigned his position. I assumed the chairmanship and CEO roles simultaneously, carrying forward my grandfather's vision while implementing governance reforms. Currently, we're preparing Olivia and her chosen partner to eventually assume leadership. Olivia found her perfect match without any strategic arrangement. The young man's credentials, innovative thinking, and supportive family impressed us deeply. Victor now serves as my steadfast advisor, working diligently behind the scenes while I lead publicly. When Olivia eventually assumes leadership and I relinquish these responsibilities, perhaps we might rediscover each other beyond our professional partnership. Victor's response to this possibility was a gentle smile, hopeful yet tempered by the knowledge that some wounds require time to fully heal.